I'd like to introduce our amazing keynote speaker. Elle Armageddon is a former detection, response, and threat hunt engineer. They're currently the director of security engineering at a late-stage startup, where they strive to foster an environment of mutual accountability, freely admit to not knowing everything, and trust the expertise of the engineers on their team. Their day-to-day involves a lot of having concerns and asking to see everyone's dogs, very much like mine, except it's usually the cats. While when Elle isn't working, they enjoy painting, singing, feeding their loved ones, and pointing out animals and medicinal herbs to whoever they can sucker into going on hikes with them. They also delight in playing games with their friends, exercising their hugging muscles. While they pass convincingly as human, rumor suggests that Elle may actually be a pile of raccoons in a trench coat. With that, Elle, thank you so much for being here at PancakesCon 3. I'm really honored to have you here.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. It is almost 7 a.m. here in Oakland, California, and the sun is not up yet, so that's very exciting. And let me just go ahead and share my slides. Cool. So I am here today to talk to you about two myths that are totally false that are near and dear to my heart. The first is that in order to be professional, you have to strip away everything that makes you who you are. And the second is that vegetables are terrible. These are both horrible, horrible lies. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to counter those lies and be professional while still having fun, and eat vegetables because they're amazing. So who am I? Leslie just gave an amazing introduction. I am probably several raccoons in a trench coat. And if you're wondering why you should listen to what I have to say about professionalism, that's a great question. You totally don't have to. You can spend the next 45 minutes just looking at pictures of vegetables on my slides. But I am the director of security engineering at a mid-sized startup. I currently manage the entire technical security function for a company with about 700 employees, managing a team of 10 engineers that I will be doubling in size over the course of the next year. So I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about. I'm also an anarchist. I am autistic. I'm a fresh produce enthusiast, and one of my biggest fears is public speaking. So one of the reasons to listen to what I have to say is because it's important enough that I'm here facing my fears to share my thoughts with you all. So before we get noted, I just want to touch on a brief note about power. The more structural power you hold, the greater your obligation to empower those with less. And there are a bunch of ways to do this, including straight up divesting yourself of that power and giving it over to people who do have less power over their own circumstances. Another reason, or another way that you can do that, is through fostering an environment that has different social expectations than those that are presented as the cultural norm. Or you can do both, which is probably the best way to proceed. So let's talk a little bit about what professionalism has historically meant. Professionalism has been used as a weapon to punish people who don't conform to a racist, classist, sexist, ableist societal norm, and reward those who do. And what that means is that it upholds existing oppressive power dynamics. It constructs barriers to equity and inclusion. It results in homogenous leadership organizations with dangerous and avoidable knowledge gaps. And it just reinforces the status quo, which is a racist, sexist, homophobic, ableist society. So what can we do about it? There are a whole bunch of myths about what is and isn't professional that it's definitely time to retire. People get told that they have to dress a certain way in order to be taken seriously. I know that when I was starting my career, I was told that if I didn't stop dressing so femme that no one would ever take me seriously. My response was to dress more femme and never let my coworkers see me in, flat shoes or without lipstick. And it hasn't really hampered my ability to be taken seriously. Another myth it's time to retire is that only certain hairstyles are appropriate for professional settings. This is racist. This is just straight up racism. When you set a norm that only certain hairstyles are acceptable in a professional environment, what you're actually doing is policing the way that people of color are able to express themselves and reflect the cultures that they come from, and punish their career advancement for being who they are. It's not acceptable. It never was acceptable, and it absolutely needs to stop today. You're not allowed to have visible tattoos or piercings in a lot of environments. While piercings can certainly be a safety hazard in some places, it's time to retire the myth that you can't have visible tattoos or you can't have piercings. And, sometimes tattoos maybe need to be covered because of the content of them. But the concept of tattoos being this horrible, unprofessional thing is ridiculous. I've got one right here, shows up on my Zoom calls all the time. The use of expletives or slang is unprofessional is another myth. It's fucking bullshit. I'm telling you right now, you can absolutely curse at work. You can't curse at your coworkers. That's unprofessional because it's being a dick, but you can definitely curse in meetings if cursing is the right way to express whatever thought you're trying to share. There are a lot of other myths as well, like you should eat, sleep, live, and breathe your field of expertise. You're allowed to have hobbies. That's a big part of what this whole conference is about. And it turns out that having balanced hobbies and a balanced lifestyle actually leads to a more sustainable work life for you. Additionally, a lot of the things that you learn from your hobbies, you can translate into work skills as well. And it makes it a lot easier to connect with people outside of your immediate field if you have something other than your immediate niche of expertise to talk about. Leave your personal life at home. That's all well and good. And absolutely, you should have some boundaries between your personal life and work. But the truth is that things that are happening in our home lives do impact our ability to work, and it's okay to be open about them. If you're having a hard day because things are rough at home, or you're having a hard day because you were holding hands with your girlfriend and someone was a dick about it, you're allowed to tell your teammates about that. The leave your personal life at home myth has historically been used to specifically marginalize people who are not straight. And it's time to bust that myth as well and start bringing our full selves to work. Another myth about professionalism is that some roles are more important than others and management holds all of the power. Not only is this totally not true, but you might be thinking that I'm subtly suggesting that you should unionize. And you'd be wrong. I'm not being subtle. If you are an individual contributor, you hold a massive amount of power and you should absolutely band together with your colleagues and unionize. So what actually is professionalism? It's actually the art of not being a jerk, but for money. It's pretty simple, right? And when you're at work, you need to consider three things: yourself, your colleagues, and management. Also, over on the other side of this slide is an amazing pot of lentils. I went ahead and sauteed some diced onions, serrano peppers, and ginger together, and then put them into a crock pot with black lentils and vegetable broth. And when the lentils got to a nice, dal-like consistency, I stirred in some fresh baby spinach and let the ambient heat of the lentils kind of lightly cook the spinach. So it's that perfect, very lightly cooked, still bright green, vibrant color. Brings a lot of really nice vegetal notes. This is an amazing high protein vegan dish. Highly recommend. If you're not so much on the spices, you may want to cut it down on the serrano peppers and use something like a hatch chili instead. All right, so setting yourself up for success, because let's put ourselves first when we're thinking about ourselves, our colleagues, and management. What does this actually mean? It means a whole bunch of different things, but one of the most useful things that you can do is make sure that your unique personality and perspective, which are assets, shine through in the work that you do. When we build diverse teams, we bring a whole bunch of different views into the room. And what that means is that there are more people looking at problems that we might be missing. There are more people spotting vulnerabilities. It's a really beautiful thing. And your own threat model and your own ability to spot risk as a result of your personal threat model and your personal perspective is absolutely a business asset. When people build homogenous teams, what they're actually doing is constructing blind spots and then doing nothing about them. And it's really hard to dig yourself out of having constructed a homogenous team. So it's important to build diverse teams from the ground up with that diversity of perspective as a huge priority. You can also set good boundaries for yourself. This means a whole bunch of different things, including maybe not having work assets on your personal phone, or setting working hours for yourself and not taking meetings outside of those hours. Whatever you need to do in order to make working sustainable for yourself is absolutely a reasonable boundary to set, and you should be supported in doing that. You should also take breaks when you need to. If you are feeling run down or exhausted, or you've just managed a several weeks long major security incident that still isn't actually over, but everyone is bored with, so they think that it's over, it might be a good time to take a little bit of a break, take some time off, recharge, and then come back to keep pushing things over the line so that you don't burn out, because burnout is really, really hard to recover from, and a lot of people are experiencing it right now. The only way that you can actually survive burnout and keep your career alive is to take those breaks when you do need them. You can set goals that challenge you and then ask for help achieving them. I'm, again, speaking to you today despite my absolute fear of public speaking, because it's a goal that I have to not be afraid anymore. And the amazing staff here at PancakesCon has been super supportive and kind, and are helping me work towards that goal of not being scared anymore, because I still have professional development to do too. You can do things that scare you until they aren't scary anymore, right? You can know your worth and not let anybody talk you out of it. This comes in really handy both when you're negotiating salary at a new role or advocating for a promotion for yourself. But it also is really important to keep in mind when you're being asked to do something that isn't appropriate, or seeing your work minimized, or seeing other people getting credit for your work. There are a whole bunch of ways where knowing your own worth and then feeling empowered to speak up because you know what you're worth plays out in the workplace. And it's important to never lose sight of it. Admit when you don't know something so that you don't lose opportunities to grow and learn. It's okay to not know things. I don't know things all of the time. I ask questions. Sometimes they're stupid questions. But it's more important to admit that you don't know something and then go and learn than it is to pretend that you know everything. Because if you pretend that you know everything and then proceed accordingly, you're gonna fuck it up. People are so much more likely to be willing to answer stupid questions and help you learn things if you haven't already created a mess that they have to go clean up. And also surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed badly enough to tell you when you are fucking up. And if we look over to the other side of this slide here, we have a lovely leafless salad. This is nice slices of golden beet, blood orange, red beet, and pink grapefruit with salted pistachio crumbles, or salted pistachios and goat cheese crumble, and then it's lightly dressed with a balsamic reduction. Highly recommend. These are all amazing winter produce that are available right now in most places. It's a delicious salad year round. You just want to roast those beets nicely so that they're kind of silky and soft instead of being super crunchy. Brings out the sweetness of flavor, which is balanced by a nice earthiness. And then you've got some bright tart notes from the citrus. Really a beautiful salad. Can't recommend enough. This is one of my favorites. So following your moral compass is also really important to being a professional and prioritizing yourself. And what that means is that you don't actually have to know what you're doing all the time, but you do have to know what you won't be doing. You have to know where your own lines are and feel empowered to not cross them. So what does that mean in practice? It means being consistent, being authentic. It means not making commitments that you can't deliver on, whether it's because you're overworked already and just don't have any more capacity to take on work, or because you're being asked to do something that you don't feel you can ethically execute on. Don't make commitments that you can't follow up on. Own your mistakes. Admit when you've messed up, ideally as soon as you know that you've messed up. So that instead of trying to fix it yourself and making a problem worse, you can get colleagues to help and learn from the opportunity again, instead of making it a big enough mess that other people have to actually clean it up for you. You can be accountable to yourself and others. And it's really important to be accountable to yourself and to admit your own faults and to accept them and figure out how you're going to improve on them so that you can continue to live with yourself. The most important thing that you have to be able to do at the end of any day is still look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of the decisions that you've made. And if you can't be proud of the decisions that you have made, then it's time to take a step back and ask what other decisions you could have made and what you would do differently next time, and then really commit to it. Accountability isn't being infallible, it's committing to the actual growth after you've made mistakes. The last thing that you can do to follow your moral compass and be a professional is say no to things flat out that are in conflict with your principles. For a lot of people, this means a lot of different things, and I'm not here to define where your moral compass points, but I can tell you a few things that I have said no to. I won't work for ICE. I will not work for an organization that is maintaining concentration camps at the borders of our countries. I won't do it. This means I also wouldn't work for DHS because ICE is a sub-organization of DHS. I wouldn't work for a company that is knowingly and willfully disseminating disinformation about politics or pandemic safety or vaccines, regardless of how well that policy drives engagement. And I also won't work to build tech for law enforcement agencies. These are some of my personal things that I refuse to do. You have your own lines that you can set and refuse to cross. And as I mentioned a few slides back, you do hold a massive amount of power. And you have the ability to withhold your skills and your expertise and not do things that are in conflict with who you are as a person. One of the most common arguments to this is that if you don't do it, someone else will. And you know what? That might be true, but it doesn't have to be your problem. If somebody else will do it, fine, that's on them. But you don't have to participate in things that are morally reprehensible to you. And over on the other side of the slide, we have a lovely vegan butternut squash bisque. I like to go ahead and roast the butternut squash before combining it with vegetable stock and some roasted shallots, and then taking the immersion blender to it. And if you're wondering kind of what's going on with that topping there, I like to use a lemon-infused olive oil to kind of bring some brightness to the flavor. And those are some toasted pumpkin seeds because lightly salted pepitas provide a nice crunch. The saltiness is fantastic, and also they're really great fats and proteins. So what does it mean to be a team player? Make sure that everyone is included. This can mean everything from not using language that is inherently exclusive to people in your organization. A big one that comes out of people's mouths on literally a daily basis in my professional life is, you guys. I'm not a guy, and I'm usually not the only person in the room who's not a guy. And I don't feel included when somebody addresses a room and says, you guys. It makes me feel like my thoughts aren't being solicited when someone asks, what do you guys think? Obviously, using openly racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, or otherwise oppressive language is another way where people get excluded. Don't do this. And sometimes you might fuck it up and you might say something accidentally that's exclusive. And the best way to deal with that is to take any pushback as a compliment and a vote of confidence that you are able to do better. And to say, I'm sorry, correct yourself, and then proceed. This makes it so that not only are you correcting your own actions and being accountable for your mistake, but you're not putting whoever is correcting you in a place of having to tell you that it's okay that you use language that's exclusive to them. You can also find a middle ground between independence and asking for help. And this is something that I actually talk about with my early career engineers really frequently, because they do want to solve problems on their own, and they do want to be empowered to find answers, and I want to provide that environment for them. But there's a huge difference between looking at something for a day or 2 days and giving it a night to sleep on to see if you have any breakthroughs, versus not making any progress over the course of a week or two, and then being behind on deadlines. And so what I would say is find that sweet spot, that middle ground where you aren't immediately going and asking your colleagues questions that you could Google, but you are also making sure to limit your trying to solve the problem yourself to a reasonable time frame, and aren't setting yourself back in being stubborn about not asking for help. Respect your peers' time. This can mean everything from being cognizant of time zones in this, mostly remote world that we live in, and not scheduling meetings over your coworkers' lunch hours or outside of their working hours, to just staying on track in meetings, and not letting deviations from meetings make the meeting itself useless to everyone involved. Document what you learn so that others can benefit from it too. It's really good and exciting for our workplaces to be a place where we can learn and grow, but it doesn't serve anybody if every single person who comes into that workplace has to learn the same lesson independently over and over and over again. So when you do take the time to learn something new, write it down, put it somewhere with a reasonable name so that it's easily findable, and give your colleagues the benefit of the learning that you have gone and done. Communicate clearly, and make sure that you're communicating in a way that actually makes sense to your audience. Just make sure that, when you use words, they're words that make sense to whoever it is that you're trying to explain a concept to. And make sure that when problems are cropping up, you're clearly communicating those as well, so that everybody around you knows what their expectations around timelines should be. And if you do need help with something, they know that you need that help and they can step in to provide it, or they can say something like, hey, I can't get to that right this second. I have time after 4 p.m. Can this wait until then? But making sure that you're bringing up problems early and often, and just setting clear expectations goes a really long way to being an excellent teammate. We've already talked about owning your mistakes, but it means just as much to the team as it does to your own self, for you to own your mistakes and be accountable for them. Help ensure that your peers are being heard and credited for their contributions. This one is actually really important if you are trying to maintain a diverse team. Everybody has that person who is, really outspoken and everyone knows all of their opinions. I'm often that person. Every team also has someone who is maybe a little shy and hesitant to speak up. And not only does this mean that that person's ideas aren't necessarily heard by the collective, it also often means that they don't get credited for their contributions to the group when they make them. So some things that you can do are to actively solicit feedback from people in meetings who you've noticed aren't talking much. And then when they do make suggestions, repeat things. So say, hey, Leslie, I really liked that suggestion that we do X, Y, and Z. So that whoever that person is not just having their opinion heard, but is actually being credited, and it's not getting misattributed to someone else who is maybe more outspoken. Share the uninteresting work. We all have work that nobody likes doing and that kind of sucks. One of the things that comes to mind for me is on-call work. And everybody in my org, including me, is in an on-call rotation, because the only way to make that uninteresting or kind of crappy work sustainable for anybody is for everybody to do their part. Be considerate in your feedback. This means framing things in ways that your coworkers can actually hear. It means not being needlessly cruel for, in the interest of being honest. You can be honest and kind. And it also means focusing on giving feedback that people can actually take action on instead of saying, this was bad. So providing, if you think something was bad, provide some suggestions instead of just saying, this sucked, you suck, you are bad and you should feel bad. And then don't overcommit. Be aware of how much is already on your plate. And when you are asked if you can take on extra work, evaluate whether or not you can actually do it and do a good job of it before saying yes to it. It makes a huge difference. And I promise that your coworkers would rather you say no than say yes to something and then drop the ball on everything. Sorry, I forgot to describe my salad. So here we have half of a sliced avocado sitting on a bed of mixed greens with roasted red beets, watermelon radish, cherry tomatoes, toasted pepitas. And then this is dressed with a really nice light citrus vinaigrette. I used Meyer lemon juice, mustard, champagne vinegar, and some salt and pepper. And I went ahead and just dressed the lettuce before putting everything else on top of it so that it would still look pretty. It's one of my favorite salads as well. It's just, it's fantastic. Highly recommend. So how can you be a great peer to people outside of your team? Because colleagues aren't just the people that you work with every single day. They're the people who make the company that you work for function. Everybody that you work with is your colleague. Every single person, regardless of their role, regardless of their title, they are a colleague. And you should treat all of them with equal respect. You have an obligation to treat some of them with more respect than others, and it's probably not in the direction that you think. If you are going to, give different people different amounts of respect, the people who are looked down on are the ones that you should treat with the most respect. It's not a secret that in tech, there is an implicit and sometimes explicit hierarchy between people who work in engineering and everybody else. You don't have a job without the people who don't work in engineering. You don't have a job without the people who work in sales. You don't have a job without the people who work in finance. their work is every bit as important as yours. And so if you are going to treat people with unequal amounts of respect, be sure to prioritize treating the people who are doing less glamorous work with more respect. Managers get plenty of respect. You don't have to worry about them nearly as much. So how to be a great peer. Know what your organization is trying to accomplish, and then how you fit into it. Build meaningful relationships outside of your team. So in order to understand what your company is trying to accomplish, which, let's be real, we live in a capitalist society. What your company is trying to accomplish is making more money and getting bigger. But understanding how you fit into that plan, and then what your coworkers are also doing to achieve that is really, really useful. Learn how your colleagues work and what they're trying to accomplish. And consider the impact that your work has on other people. This is actually really, really useful, and I think it gets overlooked a ton. You can't design effective security controls if you don't know what your colleagues are doing. You can't design effective security controls if you don't know how they work, what they're trying to accomplish, or what deliverables they need to provide at the end of the day. If you want to implement security controls that people will actually work with, you have to understand what they're doing. You have to talk to your peers. I can't overstate this enough. You have to talk to your peers. Communicate in ways that make sense to your audience. You and I could probably have an amazing conversation about Log4j and the implications of it. But if you go to basically anybody else, even the engineering organization, the likelihood of them understanding the security implications and scope of the Log4j incident is nearly nothing. So you have to be sure that if you are trying to get a point across, rather than using the technical terms that make sense to you and me and our immediate colleagues, you're actually speaking to people in terms that they can understand, because the point of communication is to share ideas and get both parties on the same page. It's not to sound super smart. So the more simple your communications are, the better they're going to land, the more effective they'll be. Give relevant and applicable guidance. This comes back to the same thing as designing security controls that make sense. Don't tell your coworkers in sales not to open emails and click links. That's their job. That's their entire job. Their job is opening emails and clicking links. So instead of telling them, don't open things and don't click links, have conversations with your peers about how to spot sketchy emails and what to do if they do open one and click links. Because people are going to mess up. They are going to make mistakes. And the point isn't to go, well, I told you so. I told you not to open emails and click links. The point is to have clear and open lines of communication with people so that when they do make a mistake, they know they can come to you for help fixing it. Build guardrails, not roadblocks. As we are designing security controls, we want to make sure that instead of preventing our peers from doing their jobs, we're facilitating them doing their jobs in the most secure way possible. And then remember that everyone has something to teach and something to learn. Every single person on this planet knows something that you don't, and you know something that they don't. So rather than having this like weird, oh, but I work in security and nobody knows or cares attitude, develop an attitude of intellectual curiosity. Get to know your coworkers, find out what they know, and tell them what you know. Share instead of, writing people off because they don't know things. So this salad here, we've got mixed cherry tomatoes with slices of cucumber, purple daikon radish, on a crumble of feta cheese on mixed greens. This is just really lightly dressed with a drizzle of nice olive oil and really nice balsamic vinegar. And if you look, there are also some marigold petals in there. I really like using flowers in my cooking when I can. The feta crumbles add a nice like saltiness to the salad. which kind of makes a more robust dressing not as necessary. And, colors are always great. So we're coming back to this note on power before I get into talking about managers. Again, the more structural power you hold, the greater your obligation to empower those with less. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to treat your managers with respect. I'm going to tell you how your managers should be treating you, and what you should expect from a good manager. If you are a manager, I really hope that you'll take this next slide as a challenge, and do your best to live up to the description on it. If you're already living up to the description on it, or you have things that you'd like to add, please let me know. I'm fairly new to being a manager, and I'm doing my best, but I also am always here to learn and grow. So what to expect from your manager? Honesty and respect. Your manager should be treating you with respect. If they're not treating you with respect, they're not doing their job. Clear communication of expectations and actionable feedback about your performance. Your performance reviews should never be a surprise. You should know what your performance review is going to look like based on the one-on-ones that you're having on a regular cadence, where not only do you talk about what you need from your manager in order to do your job, but where your manager lets you know how you're doing against the expectations that they have. You should have frequent alignment on priorities. Again, you should be meeting with your manager regularly. And if you are getting off track, that's a conversation that should be happening sooner rather than later, and they should be initiating it. You should be getting support in problem solving. If you are hitting a roadblock, your manager should be actively helping you figure out how to deconstruct it, climb over it, climb around it, or figure some other way out to ensure that you're not being blocked on your work. Protection from interference. Your manager should actively be preventing external entities from giving you dumb tasks. Your manager should also be preventing anybody from disrupting the work that you're doing. This is a big part of their job. It goes hand in hand with the support and problem solving and clearing roadblocks. Your manager should also be proactively preventing roadblocks from being dropped in your way whenever and wherever possible. Open sharing of relevant information. If your manager has information that affects you, they should be telling you that. There is very little to be gained from not being transparent with your reports. And the only case where it is really acceptable to not be transparent is if the information that you aren't sharing is not your information to share. So an example is if somebody has told you something in confidence, it's not appropriate to share that. But pretty much everything else, if it affects your staff, you should be telling them. Trust in the abilities and expertise of your team. You as an individual contributor are a subject matter expert, and it's your manager's job to have faith in your expertise. And this is something that definitely goes both ways. You're already committing to not bullshitting about the things that you do and don't know. And as long as you're committing to being honest about what you know, your manager should actually trust the things that you are telling them. That doesn't mean that they should never ask questions, but it does mean that they should have faith in you, and they should also have faith in you to execute on your job instead of breathing over your shoulder, constantly asking, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How about now?" That attitude doesn't actually help anyone. It just makes things take longer. Explaining the rationale behind decisions. If your manager has made a decision and you don't understand it, you should feel empowered to ask, "Hey, can you help me understand the rationale behind this decision?" And your manager should go, "Oh yeah, totally." And then they should explain it. If your manager can't explain themselves to their staff, they're not doing their job very well. And I understand that some people think that being asked to explain their decisions is a challenge. of their authority or knowledge or whatever. But if you can't explain why you made a decision that you made, how much knowledge do you actually have? Your manager should be advocating for your needs. They should support you in maintaining your boundaries, and they should be asking active questions about your career goals. If your manager isn't asking you what you want to do next, what you want to be learning, what you don't want to be doing, they're only doing part of their job, because a huge part of what it means to be a manager is to support the growth of the people that you are managing. They won't always work for you personally. And so it's important to spend the time that you do have together, giving them the tools that they need for whatever comes next. Managers should be giving you opportunities for growth, and they should also be constructing a safe environment for you to fail and learn in. And what that means is that your managers should be challenging you, but they shouldn't be giving you high stakes things that you don't know how to do and then not supporting you in delivering on them. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails. It's not bad or wrong to make mistakes or to fail at things. It's bad and wrong to not support people in things that they don't have a good chance of succeeding at. And it's also not great to make the same mistake over and over and over again and fail in the exact same way over and over and over again and never learn anything from it. So it is really important to have an environment where it is safe to fail, and where the conversation around the failure is entirely centered around how to not do it again. Sorry, this is a burrata, which is a like cream-filled fresh mozzarella, with slices of this gorgeous purple tomato that had this like pink and green interior flesh. It was amazing. I have sprinkled it with a little bit of alderwood smoked salt, and some pepper, and just given it a nice, light drizzle of that balsamic reduction, and some lemon olive oil as well. We've just got a little bit of a sourdough toast there to kind of round everything out. It's an amazing, super quick, easy meal. I did eat that entire burrata. It was amazing. It was very filling. But yeah, super quick, easy meal. Tomatoes are amazing and you should love them, especially if you can get, really good fresh ones that are actually in season, which these totally were. So a few helpful phrases for maintaining professionalism in the workplace. Can you help me understand the context behind this decision? This is the polite way of saying, what the fuck were you thinking? And while it totally is okay to curse in professional settings sometimes, generally speaking, you're not supposed to curse at your colleagues, as I have mentioned. And it's also difficult to get good answers or proactive action if you come at interactions with people about questionable decisions from a place of accusation. So instead of approaching people with the assumption that they are dumb and wrong, you should approach them with intellectual curiosity. Assume that there was some kind of reasoning behind a choice that was made and maybe was not a good one, and ask to understand what led up to that decision being made, instead of asking, what the fuck were you thinking? What are the outcomes you'd like to achieve? This is a really great way to ask, what are you trying to do here? Again, in a way that is intellectually curious and assumes that there is something reasonable going on and you just don't understand what it is. This is really helpful when you're being given a task that makes no sense, or that doesn't make any sense to you. This is also really helpful when it seems like somebody may have a solution that they've latched onto and maybe seeking a problem to apply the solution to, instead of finding a problem and trying to create a solution to that problem. What stakeholders have you solicited feedback from? is a great way to ask, who does this work impact? And have you checked in with the people who you're about to interfere with? It's really great, especially in terms of security controls being introduced that maybe don't make a ton of sense or that are going to have negative impact on colleagues outside the security organization. It's also a great question when somebody is proposing something just absolutely fucking insane. And you want a good way to kind of push back and say, like, I think that we should get feedback from some more people before we proceed with this. Which of my current projects would you like me to drop in order to prioritize this? This one's really useful for the managers who maybe aren't super great at knowing what their teams are working on. If your manager is trying to assign more work to you and you're already at capacity, this is a really great way to A, subtly enforce a boundary of, I'm already at capacity, I can't take on anything more. But B, also help remind that person of all of the other things that you're already working on. It may be that they've forgotten. It may be that the thing that they're asking you to do actually is higher priority than something else that you're working on. And it's a really great opportunity to realign whatever priorities you think you have versus what priorities your manager thinks you have, and make sure that you agree on both. I need sign off from legal in order to proceed. This is the polite way of saying that's fucking illegal and I don't want to get sued over this. You will get asked to do things in your career that are at best legally questionable. And it's always okay to kick the ball over to legal and say, hey, I'm being asked to do this. Did you know about this? And let them come in and say no. Or, maybe legal will say yes to the thing that you are being asked to do, and that it's time to update your resume and find somewhere else to be. And finally, I'm afraid that won't be possible. This is a really, really wonderful way to say no. Just straight up, no, I'm not doing that. It is not apologetic. It is a firm boundary where, I'm afraid this won't be possible, is a way for you to assert that you will not be doing whatever the thing that you are being asked to do is. And there are a multitude of reasons that you might want to use this term. All of them are valid. Just make sure that you don't say, I'm afraid that that won't be possible to everything. You only use it for the situations where you really, really need a firm and unwavering no. Most things in life and in work are negotiable. So save this one for your big guns. And I realized that, I said that it is okay to curse at work. You've definitely heard me curse plenty of times in this presentation. The one thing that I will say about cursing at work is know your audience. It's probably fine to curse on an incident bridge or in team internal meetings, again, as long as you are not cursing at your peers. I would recommend against cursing in front of your executive team or your board of directors. And I would really recommend against cursing in front of any customers that you may have. And then right here, we've got a mixed green salad with slices of fresh persimmon and pomegranate seeds. Got some toasted pistachios in there, and some fresh ricotta. And this is another salad that I dressed with that light lemon vinaigrette. Just really beautiful, fresh produce. I really like putting crunchy things in my salad. The textural variance is really nice. So thank you so much. I hope that you've learned something about professionalism, what it is, what it isn't, and how to be a professional today. And just a couple notes on the fresh produce. You can put whatever the fuck you want in a quiche. It's amazing. Quiche is amazing. It is a great way to eat vegetables in a way that maybe doesn't even feel like vegetables entirely. You can put whatever you want in a quiche. There are no rules. The one on this slide is made with mixed mushrooms. It was awesome. In the center here, we've got a vegan carrot ginger soup that I made with purple carrots instead of orange ones, just for fun. Went ahead and used a little coconut milk in there to thicken it up and give it a little extra viscosity. And then over on the other side there, we've got another salad with half an avocado in it, because getting those fats and proteins in your salads is really, really good and important. And this one you'll notice is sprinkled with a little bit of tagine, which I love. It's like salt, but spicy. It's great. There are no rules. Just try not to hurt anybody and be good to yourself, both at work and in the produce aisle. Thank you so much, everybody.